In this week's episode of the Ask the Big podcast, we're going to be answering the question, is fire or structural damage that's been fully repaired still a material fact? Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Ask the Bick podcast, where you'll hear answers to the most frequently asked questions from North Carolina real estate brokers. Submit your questions via email to askthebic@gmail.com. That's askthebic@gmail.com.
Well, welcome to another week of the Ask the Big podcast. My name is Russ Lockamy. I have been a broker in charge in the Raleigh, North Carolina area since 2011. And the question that we're going to be answering this week is actually one of my own. It's a question that I came up with about a week or two ago when I was going over the new property disclosure statement and reading through that. And in one of the paragraphs of that, it had a statement that fire and structural damage, even if it was repaired, may still have to be disclosed by a broker. It was a notice to the seller about that. So I thought this would be a great question to talk about in the Ask the Big podcast. So very first thing we need to talk about is when disclosing things, we know we have to disclose material facts. And material facts are have several different categories. One being something about the property. So, if there is current fire damage, we've always known we've had to disclose that, something that's not been repaired. Things related to the property, so things like zoning or restrictive covenants that might affect the property, things that affect the ability of a principal in the transaction to complete the transaction. So your buyer, if you're representing the buyer and your buyer can no longer qualify for the loan, that would be a material fact that you would need to disclose to the seller or the listing agent as a buyer's agent. And things that are of known special importance to a party. So things like if your buyer did not want to buy a home that had cats previously, that could be a material fact if it's something that your buyer is it's especially important to them, and it would, if you knew about it or should have known about it, you would have to disclose it. So again, material facts are things that fall into one of these four categories that agents should know about or that they have actual knowledge to. Let's talk about this. So fire and structural damage, that was specifically listed in the new property disclosure statement as things that would have to be disclosed by agents even if they were fully repaired. So and this kind of came as a little bit of a surprise to me. I wanted to get clarification, so I actually called the North Carolina Realtors legal hotline and talked to one of the attorneys on staff, and he in fact confirmed my assumption that with this new language, the North Carolina Real Estate Commission is basically putting us on notice that agents, we have to disclose things that are material facts about the property, damage to the property, even if it's been fully repaired. That is something that falls into that category of things about the property. Now, he did express that, it's something that they pushed back on when the North Carolina Real Estate Commission was updating the forms, because it does put kind of an undue liability on agents. Like, where do we draw the line on past issues that have been repaired already? And it's interesting because in North Carolina, of course, we are a buyer beware state, so sellers do not have to disclose anything about the property really, with very few exceptions. But agents, we're held at a higher standard. So because of that, if you know it, you should show it. So if you know that a property used to have a fire or used to have a structural damage, but everything's been repaired, show it. Get invoices, get a list of things that were done and when they were done, and disclose those things. Now, what is the line that's drawn? There's not one, really. You have to use your own judgment. Normal maintenance type things, may or may not be required to be disclosed. But what I would suggest, and what I'm suggesting to our agents, is that you would consider providing an information sheet to provide to buyers and buyers agents, if this is your listing, that shows all of the repairs, all of the replacements and upgrades that your sellers have done to the home since they purchased it, and when they made the repairs, what was done. If it's a large thing like a fire or something like that, maybe you even see if you can get the invoice and provide the invoice to potential buyers and things like that. But go ahead and provide that to buyers. Put it on the MLS in the document section. Leave it at the home with showings, and email that to your buyers and buyers agents that are interested in that listing. But yes, to answer the question, even if it's fully repaired, fire and structural damage is definitely still a material fact if agents know or should have known about it. And it's not just limited to fire and structural damage like is listed on the first page of the new property disclosure statement. It could be other repairs as well. So if you know it, show it. I hope this answers a question for you guys. If you ran into this same issue when looking over the property disclosure as I did. As always, my name is Russ Lockamy. Life is short, so take action, but don't take it too seriously. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Ask the BIC podcast. To have your question answered on a future episode, email us at askthebic@gmail.com. That's askthebic@gmail.com.